Start recording here. Good morning and happy Saturday to everybody. Welcome to the February Water Efficient Landscaping Workshop brought to you by the UCCE Master Gardener of Riverside County and Western Water. My name is Jeffrey Diaz and I'm joined today by Melody Knox and our speaker, Lynn Kaufman. And today's workshop topic is going to be on irrigation design and is part 2 of the series. Like we were saying, if you missed the first part on how to remove your lawn and get everything ready, prepped for landscape transformation, they're on the westernwaterca.gov website where you can register for the next upcoming workshop as well. Right now I'm going to pass it over to Melody Knox so that she can introduce our speaker and plug in the Master Gardener activities going on in the area.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Melody Knox, and I'm a Master Gardener with Riverside or UC Riverside. And if I could ask a favor of you, if there are some Master Gardeners here from different counties, if you could just put your county into the chat box just to let me know, because I did try to reach out to some other Master Gardeners in different areas. But really quick, for those of you who are not Master Gardeners, I also like to let you know that you can find us throughout Riverside. And well, all over the county, but I'd like to mention a few of our Master Gardening events through Riverside County. And we are trained volunteers that offer science-based information. And we advise and educate the public on gardening and horticulture. So we have information tables as an Ask the Master Gardener, and they're often available at farmers markets throughout Riverside County, Corona, Temecula, Valen, the Promenade, Moreno Valley, Marietta, and downtown Riverside, meaning that we're like all over the place. If you are going to the desert area, look for us at the farmers market in Palm Springs or La Quinta on the first Sunday, or I should say the first Saturday of the month. RCD has a Master Gardener table available to the public at this location. And it is Public Land Use Learning Center. So we invite you to tour the 3-acre demonstration garden of sustainable practices. We do a whole lot, and I will be putting some information into the chat so that way you guys can also reach out to us for the ones that are not Master Gardeners if you have any questions on about gardening or just questions period, even about the Master Gardener program. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get Lynn on board here. And I'm not going to say a whole bunch about Lynn, and because we've taken up a whole lot of time anyway. I'm going to let Lynn introduce herself. She's also one of our Master Gardeners, an excellent speaker. And from what I remember, Lynn, you were studying on garden design, but just tell everybody more about you. You can brag about yourself. This is the time you get to
brag. Well, thank you very much, Melanie. I'm going to kind of go through this, and then I'm just going to, ask you to advance the slide when we go, because we're again part of that technical difficulty. So what I'm talking about today is irrigation and design in regards to irrigation. As I said, the one before was on how to remove and prep for the turf removal. So that would be the step you would do first, is take out your turf if that's what you're doing. So what I'm going to be talking about is how do you create an efficient system so that your landscape will thrive. Next slide, please. And I actually like to talk about it. Everyone thinks it's all about the Lego-like application of sticking stuff together and running water through it. And I really like to look at it from a little different point of view. And that is, what's the whole goal? Why do you even have irrigation? It's a self-evident question that people often forget. And what that means is that you're trying to get a replication of the ideal natural rainfall so that your plants will thrive. That's the point. It's not about the irrigation system. It's about the application of the right amount of water to your plants so they're going to thrive and be beautiful or grow a great crop, whichever one that you're going for. So with that in mind, I'm going to advance the slide again, please. I want to talk about the fact that this is really a Goldilocks approach. Not too much, not too little, just the right amount. And there's actually 3 things that go into designing a irrigation system so that you get the right amount of water. You need to have the right plant in the right place. You need to have the right amount of water that you're applying at the right time through the best irrigation system. And then you have to have the right application of horticultural practices to make all of those things come together to get the optimum amount of water to your plants. It's once you've investigated those three elements, you may find that you don't have the right plant in the right place. Or you may find you're not using the right irrigation system that those plants like. Or you're just not keeping things up to the highest quality of repair and using additional horticultural practices to improve what you're doing. So there will be a little bit of diagnostic analysis to see how you're going to be doing the zig and zag, if you will, to make all of this come together. Next slide. So why would you listen to what I have to say? Well, I am not only a master gardener, I grew up on a farm. I've been working with plants my entire life, and I'm not a spring chicken, so that's been a while. I am also certified as a qualified water efficient landscaper. That is an EPA certification that means that I know enough to be dangerous about water systems, how to put them together, and how to be sure that they're working with the plantscape that you're working with. I also had worked for a while through the turf replacement program through the state of California and several water districts in Southern California, doing water audits at homeowners' residences to help them improve their irrigation systems. And so between some of the science and some of the practical experience, I can get your garden looking, pretty okay sometimes. So my interests are really the efficiency of water. I got interested in that when I first moved as a young adult to California from the Midwest. And I realized, wow, it's really different here. You have to think about water in a whole different way. And I am kind of about beauty. I want our cities to be beautiful. I don't want them to look like Arizona, because we don't need to. And that's because most people don't know how to make their yards look that way and still be water efficient. So I help people make that transition or improve what they have. And at the same time, we're helping the environment. So it's also sustainable use of plants and water to help our little wild creatures as well. So that's a little bit about me. I'm standing in front of a yard that I redesigned. It was a builder grade, standard turf lawn with foundation plantings, and I converted it to be 100% on drip and water efficient. And this is a young garden that's probably been in about a year when I was standing there. But you can see that it will be quite lush and beautiful as it fills in as well. So it can be lovely. Next slide. So using supplemental water is not new on the horizon. It's been here for a long time. I think they have archaeological evidence that goes back about 6,000 years, but I would say it's more widespread in Egypt and China over the last 3,000 years. And the reason that they developed it is because they're in areas where there's little water available, or has very big seasonal swings in their water. And without it, they could not build sustainable agriculture. That was the basis of it, was for food growing. And so they have learned a lot about ways to stretch the little water that they have and use it year round or seasonally in order to sustain themselves. So we're just going to take a look at some of the ways that they have done that. And we're going to apply them more to the automatic end of the irrigation system, because that's what most people want to do. Although I will give a nod to some hand watering as well. And so we want to kind of use a mix of techniques in order to get water moved from one place to another and get it to where it needs to be applied. Nowadays, in an urban area, that usually means you have a water district that gives you water and you turn on a tap. So they're doing the hard work of getting the water to a reservoir, and then you just say, I want it now. And you turn on the tap, and then you get it. So we'll talk about it from that point to how you're using it. Next. So we do have to take a nod to where we actually live. And contrary to the advertising that was done, I'd say in the 50s and particularly hard, was that the ideal lawn was a green expanse of grass with foundation plantings. It stems back to the idea of showing wealth, actually, in England in the 1800s. And as technology improved, then middle-class people could give that illusion, so they went with that. And it was part of advertising to bring people from the East Coast out to California to populate it. So that's where the genesis of that idea came. The problem is now that everybody's doing it and they don't know what it really should look like to live in California. And what we are is one of 5 regions of the world that have what they call a Mediterranean climate. And what that means is that they have usually have wet winters and long, dry, hot summers. So it has a very extreme movement in the water distribution naturally. It's a rare area. About 3% of the Earth, the Terra Earth, is in a Mediterranean climate. And so how do you work with nature rather than against it? Because I showed in the lawn I was standing, it's still going to be lush and beautiful. It's just going to be different. So what we're trying to do is work with the rainfall that we get and then supplement beyond that in order to extend the plants that we are able to have here. And our plantscape can be quite large because there are 5 regions. All those plants that grow in those regions will also grow here. So it gives us a lot of plants to choose from in order to get what we want in our yards. So, next slide. So let's go look at your yard. If you walk out into your yard now, what is the environment that your plants are living in? So whether it's turf or whether it's other kinds of planting beds, do they live in shade? Do they live in full sun, partial sun? Is it very windy? Are they on a slope? Are they in a low area? What kind of soil are they growing in? Is it sandy? Is it the perfect, I'll say, loam? Is it heavy clay? All of those factors influence how a plant thrives. And our native California plants for Southern California, because it's a big state, there's a lot of native that doesn't work here too, all evolved to accept those conditions which you see, out in the hills. So any plants you have that have evolved will be able to thrive in those conditions. So take a look at where your plants are so you can see if they're sited right. And that's what was meant by that first ABC of right plant, right place. We want to make sure that we're trying to get all those plants that are in the right location, which means you may want to reconsider some of what your plants are living. You may need to move some things around. Next. So now that we know what your conditions of your yard in, and it's kind of a good idea to make a sketch on a piece of paper and kind of do bubble drawings of it's shady here or sunny there or windy or slopey or whatever it is. Because now you're going to have to go back and find what are the plants? What plants do you have in those locations? And again, this doesn't have to get down to the very, very specific. This is just kind of give you an idea of where to go. Turf is one kind of plant. So there's different kinds of turf. If that's helpful, we'll get to that in a minute. If it's a cool season or a warm season, turf grass in particular. Is it a plant that is from Australia, like kangaroo paw? Is it a tree? What kind of tree is it? What kind of bushes do you have? So if you don't know what plants you have, you're going to also work with the condition of the plants. Are they doing well or not doing well? But identify the ones that are that you have. If you don't know what the plants are, these different places can help you identify them. You can take a picture or a sample of them. Be sure to put it in plastic if you're taking it to a nursery in case you have any gloves with them. And then say, what is this plant? And a good nursery, I don't mean a big box nursery, I mean an actual nursery, can pretty well identify plants. Master gardeners can often identify plants. So if you go to a farmer's market or whoever and have them say, I don't know what this is, do you? A lot of times they'll be able to. And then there's some new apps now that make it easier to click a picture and it will identify you. They're not 100% accurate, of course, neither are anybody else, but it gives you at least a good breadcrumb to follow to kind of get an idea of what you have growing in your yard. So we want to talk about that just a little bit. So let's go to the next slide. What you're looking for, besides the name of the plant, is how much water do they use? And all plants are broken down into either they're a high water use, a moderate water use, a low, or a very low moderate use. And in broad strokes, what that means is that turf grass, by the way, is a monoculture. It's a lot of closely put together plants, actually. And it is the highest water use plant in the world. And so it's placed at high water use. That means in broad strokes, regardless of the grass, in order for it to look good, it needs 1 to 2 inches of water a week in order to do well. All other plants are measured against that standard. And so there's moderate use plants. So a good example of a moderate plant would be roses. In order to look good, they need a little more water. Many roses can live on lower water and stay alive. But to look good, they need a little bit more water. So those are moderate water users are more what you would think of plants that you see on the East Coast. It would be roses and things like azaleas, peonies, things that you typically would see more on the East Coast than you would see here, need more water. Low water use are broadly plants that come from the Mediterranean region. So that would be like the picture that's labeled lavenders. That's a true geranium, not the zonal geranium. There's lamb's ear, all the sages, those types of plants, which as you can see are very colorful as well, are low water uses once they're established. And then the very low is what you would typically think of as a desert type plant, succulents, cactus, things of that nature. And again, that gives you just a broad idea of how to think about them, so you know kind of what grouping they should go in. It's important to know the grouping because to be efficient with irrigation, you need to have plants grouped together. The fancy word is hydrozone, so that you have plants that like the same environmental conditions and the same water needs on the same zone. We'll go over this again as I go through here. These websites that I have listed are excellent resources for understanding what the water needs are for all the plants. The Waterwise Garden Planner is local. It's in Claremont. It has a demonstration garden if you want to go look and see what they're talking about. And it lists all the plants that are appropriate for Inland Empire. So it's very specific to our Riverside region. That does well with low and very low plants. The WUCL's site listed below is kind of the Bible for the entire state. It lists like 3,500 different plants. Some of those won't apply to our region, but it's the go-to if you really want to know what works here. If it's a plant that's not in the Waterwise Garden Planner, I can guarantee you 99% sure it'll be in the WUCL's. So that will help you identify that if you need to get further help on deciding what that is. Next. So this is back to the hydrozone idea. I'm sorry, this picture is a little grainy, but what it's showing is two things. It's showing a design concept for aesthetics, as well as a design concept for water efficiency. So what that means is you'll notice that the plants are in groupings, like you see all of those black-eyed Susans at the bottom. That's called a drift in the landscape design vernacular, where you have swaths of the same plant together for impact. In addition to that, they are actually all have the same water needs. But you'll notice every plant doesn't have to have its own valve. So next to those black-eyed Susans, you have some Liastris, I'm assuming from here. And that is also a low water use plant. So you can mix plants together So you don't have to have all the same plant all the time, but it's all watered on the same. In this case, it would probably be a drip irrigation system. Additionally, you'll notice by the mulch, it kind of gives you away. They have areas that are gravel, so that means it needs a lot of drainage. So you also see a slope with rocks on it. So the plants closest to that area require less water than the plants that are moving out from there where they have more shade and whatever. So it allows you to fine tune your watering to support the plants that you need. And that's called hydrozoning. So keep that in mind. Next slide. So I'm going to give you a little more scientific approach to the hydrozone, is that you want to use less high water use plants in your garden. Doesn't mean eliminate them necessarily, but have the least amount, have more moderate, and have the bulk of them be in the lower, very low category. Make sure all of the plants with that environmental needs and water needs are on the same valve in your yard, so that when you're irrigating it, you're not over irrigating or under irrigating to make the plants thrive. That's why you're identifying your plants. So if you find, oops, I've got a cactus next to a hydrangea, you better move one of them, because one of them is going to die. You either overwater it or you underwater it. And that's the concept behind hydrozoning. Next. So let's talk about your systems. And in broad strokes, we're going to say, how old is it? Because a lot of technology has improved in the last 5 years. If your irrigation system is much over 5 years old, you probably need some improvement just in the system components to make it efficient. So again, in broad strokes, if I went out to someone's lawn, this is what I would kind of read as I walked into their space. If I see a lot of standard sprinkler nozzles, poor maintenance, and plants that are thriving in some areas and not in others, that's going to give me about a 50% efficiency rate. Just, I haven't even investigated or much. All I've done is walk in the yard and notice those things. So if you have a yard that is doing that, you have a lot of room for improvement with some pretty inexpensive tweaks, which we'll describe in a minute. Most people are not in that poor condition, frankly. What I see the bulk of is in the medium efficiency. That means they often have mismatched sprinkler nozzles. Usually those are people that have a gardener, and the gardener sort of takes care of their lawn. And when they see a broken sprinkler head, they might go to their truck and go, that'll work, and I'll put it on your sprinkler system. I'll tell you why that doesn't work well. It does work, but not well. That's going to give you about 65% efficiency doing that. And that's assuming you're watering it properly and mostly keeping it up to snuff. Your high efficiency is going to be when you have the newest and most upgraded water efficiency components for your systems. You're using a smart controller, you're using the rotary nozzles, you're using drip where you can, you're using the proper scheduling, and that's another part of the program in order to make it work the most efficiency. No system is perfect. You will never get 100% efficiency. We're trying to get it the most efficient that you can. So it's really about effectiveness as much as it is about efficiency. Next. So again, there is no perfect system. So what's the system that's going to work the best for you? And broadly speaking, that's going to be some form of drip, some form of overhead spray, and potentially some hand watering overhead spray. And I put overhead in quotes, not quite, because there is a very efficient and practical use of hand watering as well. So we don't want to negate that as an option. So with those 3 categories in mind, next. We want to know that you've audited your yard. You don't start fixing something until you know what you're fixing and why. So it's very simple when you look at your yard on how to go out and look at it. You're just going to walk around the yard when the sprinkler systems are on and see what is or isn't working. Now, if you want to replace certain parts of your system, like a nozzle or convert to drip or whatever it may be, your water district has a lot of rebates available for a lot of those components. So before you go out and buy anything, write down what you need, check to see what's available to you, and then purchase after that. There, you can do the yard yourself. I do recommend if you do it yourself, it's easier with two people. The reason it's easier with two people is one person is taking notes and the other person is turning the system off and on. Rather than running back and forth or around to wherever your controller is and back. Or many water districts offer a free water audit through their district. So check to see if they do. And I believe, Jeffrey, that Western does offer that service. Is that correct?
Yes, we do. Western offers that service, and at the moment, Metropolitan Water District is also offering that service if you're outside of the Western district. And I will put that in the chat so that everybody can check that out after the presentation, just so I don't mess anything up.
That's great. Thank you very much. And it's a very good audit. I mean, they tell you what you need. They tell you what's available for rebates. It's a nice way to do it, especially if you don't want to. I recommend you do it yourself to keep track of things afterward, but it's a good first step to do that. Next. So this is what you should be looking for and what the water auditor will be looking for. They're going to look for evidence that something isn't working properly. So if they saw this water running down on the curb through the driveway, that would indicate it could indicate a couple of things. One, it could be a broken sprinkler head. It could be no sprinkler head. It could be that they're overwatering. And by overwatering, they haven't scheduled it right, so the water will sink in. So it's just an indicator. They still have to do a little more investigation to get to the root cause of that. At the top right picture, that's clearly the big one, looks like a head is popped off. It could be a broken pipe, but that's what a head that's popped off usually looks like. Behind it, you'll notice how misty looking those sprays look. That could be a couple of things too. It could be that they're buried too deep, which is kind of what I'm suspecting looking at that. Or the plant growth has grown too tall, so it's blocking it. It could be either one of those. It could also be that the pressure is off, because misting is a symptom of the water pressure being too high. And I don't come across too many yards in an urban area that have a water pressure that's off, but it could be that. And so that would be one of the things that the auditor would also check is what's your water pressure that's in the right range for the type of irrigation you're using. And it does need to be different between drip and overhead spray. We'll come to that too. At the bottom, that's actually probably showing, it does have some misting, but what I'm really seeing there is that the heads have been knocked out of place and they're watering the fence. They're not watering the grass. So there are many different reasons why your system might need some fine tweaking, like in repair and readjusting just where things are located. Next. One of the things on a drip system that you'll notice, besides the obvious upper right, which is the head that has failed and it's just shooting, and you may notice a line that's been pierced if the line is above the mulch. If it is not above the mulch, what you're going to see is on the left. That's usually the first symptom, dead plants. So checking your drip system requires a little more effort than checking your overhead spray, because you can't just walk around a drip system. Sometimes you have to dig under the mulch to kind of make sure what's really happening. Next. So if you just need tweaking done to your system, this is what you want to do for looking for repair and upgrading. We'll get to that. Check if there's any leaks in the system. I do see leaks at the valves. That's what the lower or the big one on the left is. If you see water coming out of that when you turn the water off and on, if it's a water and it comes in and out very quickly, it's okay. But if you see it actually pouring for any length of time, you've got a bad valve. I don't want to get into the fine details of how you know where to bleed your valves and whatever, because that's a project discussion all onto itself. But I'm just showing the different components that could go bad on you related to that valve system. And that's where, if you're not real handy or you like electricity, I would call an irrigation specialist to check that for you. You don't need to do that very often. But if you have very old valves, like a lot of the metal valves that are like 25 years old, probably a good time to have that checked and replaced, actually. The bottom one is showing the leak meter in the water meter that goes into your house. If you see that little tiny dial moving, you got a leak somewhere. It could be inside the house or outside, so there needs to be some investigation, but you'll know there's a leak. And again, I think your water district would come and look at that and help you with that if you had that happen. Next. Now we want to upgrade. This is where I see a lot of people getting things wrong. They have the best of intentions, but don't fully understand the plumbing involved here. Most people that the water district is trying to get you to switch from standard spray heads. That's what you typically think of when you see pop-ups and they spray all over the yard. Those are not efficient. The reason they're not efficient, I mean, they work fine, but you see at the bottom, the output of the water is about 1.5 to 2 inches an hour. That's basically why you have to run your system several times a week, maybe over several cycles, because you have to have time for the water to sink in and not run off. That is a lot of water output in an hour. Think about the last rain we had. When we were getting 1 inch an hour or 2 inches an hour of rain, you could see how fast that didn't soak in and ran off. That's what's happening with your sprinkler system. So if you switch out those heads, which is basically unscrewing it and screwing in a new head, go to the rotary nozzles. And that's because they are designed differently to have like those fingers that rotate around. It slows the rate of the output, makes larger water drops so they fall to the ground and not evaporate up into the air. That's why they're more efficient. And as you can see, they're about 1/2 inch an hour. So the mistake people make is they go to the truck and they have some sprinkler heads are standard and some are rotary nozzles. What happens? You're running it for, let's pretend it's an hour to make math easy. One spray head is putting out 2 inches of water and one spray is putting out 1/2 inch of water. What do you think that does to your plants? Somebody's drowning and somebody's dying. So that's why you match all of your sprinkler heads on a line. You have to get the output the same so you know how to adjust it to get the water needed to the plants. And I see this mistake a lot. In addition, those rotor sprinklers that have that big throw to them that go like that, they're not used for slopes anymore. That's not best practices. They can work for large areas of turf, you know, like a golf course where you've got a huge lot. And they put out about 1/2 inch an hour, so they can be effective, but now you got to make sure the design is right for your overlap, especially in those. Next. And speaking of design, this is about water distribution over ground cover, which could be turf or it could be actual ground cover. And it's critical that the spray heads go from one to the other. And the reason they have to do that is if it just goes to here, it's getting less water at the initiation point and more water at the far end. So you want to even that out by having them go head to head. Sorry for my hand movements, but that's the best way I can describe that. So what you'll notice in a yard is you may have dead spots in your yard. Now, where you want to check for that is in the upper right corner. You'll see how even that circle is of dead grass. That's going to indicate an inefficient design as opposed to pest damage, which can also look like spots in a yard. But so you're looking for the distribution of the spots. In addition to that, you need to see where the water is flowing. So watch the system when it's running so you can see where it is or isn't going. Is it showing up on the fence? Is it showing up in part of the yard? Next, you want to actually test the soil. Dig in a little. Is it wet or is it dry? That's going to also give you another indication about what's happening. So all those techniques will decide if you need to change the design. And what that usually means by change design is you probably need to add more heads in. That is not going to make you use more water, by the way. It's going to make you use the water efficiently. Next. So now if you want to convert to drip from spray, these are some things I want you to remember. This goes to gallons per hour, not inches per hour, which means it's a lot slower to come out. Where I see a lot of people do this wrong is that they say, I'm gonna convert my existing overhead spray to drip. That's no problem doing that. They're not doing it right. They think they need to run a drip line from each of those heads. No, you cap all the heads but one, so the system is now truly going through one drip system. In addition, they can't mix and match them. They can't keep some as sprays and some as drip on that valve because the pressure is different, remember? One is using a lower pressure as a drip, the other one has to use a high pressure. So you're either gonna blow the system out or something's gonna go wrong. There could be a number of things go wrong. Remember, you must increase your run time on drip. So it is not wrong to run drip for an hour. You need the hour in order to get the half an inch in. It isn't equal for spray to drip. I see that happening a lot. I'm gonna save water, I'm converting to drip, I run it less. No, you run it more. So those are just some things to think about. It's critical on a drip system. They're a little fussier, you need to work with them longer and harder. They need routine maintenance more than overhead spray does. You must have a backflow preventer so it doesn't put water backflow possibility into your house, inside the house. And you need a filter so that it can catch the rocks and minerals that we have pretty mineralized water around here, so that it will not clog all the way down the drip system. And you need to flush those periodically. Twice a year would be great if you could do it that much. And then it's kind of tinker toys after that. You have a 1/2 inch tube, you may use 1/4 inch tubes, you have some kind of emitter at the end. So the setup at the valve is the critical part. The other is pretty simple. Next. I'm just going to talk briefly about point source emitters. Most people have some familiarity with that. You can get them in a whole variety of sizes. 1/2 gallon, 1 gallon, 2 gallon, 3 gallon. They can be micro sprays, they can be bubblers, they can be adjustable, they can be fixed. There's 60 billion of them. The two things I want you to know about this mostly is that you cannot mix micro spray with other emitters. Again, it's a pressure deal, don't mix them. You can mix a 1/2 gallon with a gallon emitter, like the button ones at the bottom there. But I really recommend that you not do that. I really recommend, it's a lot easier for management and part purposes. Have them all 1 gallon, and then you just adjust the time to work with what your plants need. That's what I do as a best practice. I also, as a best practice, almost use 0 1/4 inch tubing. Because I find that that's a lot of break points. They become detached from the 1/2 inch. So I put the emitters directly, like in that lower left corner, directly onto the 1/2 inch tube. Again, that's a best practice. That's not an experience. That is not wrong. Do it the other way. I just find it's got less problems down the line to do it that way. Be sure you get the tools. Buy the tools. Don't make your life miserable. Get the punch so you can insert 1/4 inch tube into tubing. You're going to need goof plugs because you'll get it wrong. Or you need to expand the system. Get the goof plugs, get the line cutter, because it's a lot easier to cut those 1/2 inch lines with that than trying to do that with pruners or scissors or any other knife, anything else. So get them. They're not very expensive to buy. Have the right tools. It really will make your life a lot easier. It's also think about the couplings, because sometimes those compression couplings are very, very problematic to get in. They have some that are barbed. So think about how you want to combine lines together to make your life easier also. But you can get them in big box stores. You can go to an irrigation supply. You know, they're available pretty much everywhere. Next. To make life easy for small areas, they sell complete kits at Lowe's, Home Depot, that type of store. It has all the pressure regulator things that you need for the connections. You don't have to think, you're just putting it together like Legos, laying it out around your plants, and voila, you've got it done. So it's especially good if you have containers. Just use those kits, attach it to a faucet. But it works well for small beds as well. You don't have to know too much about plumbing if you're keeping the line within 200 feet. After that, or if there's a lot of slope, there's more involved, but it's pretty simple with that basic way of looking at it. Next. I want to talk a little bit about the types of drip. There's the point sources, most people are familiar, but the newer thing is the inline drip. You'll see that in most commercial operations now. It's beginning to move into the residential market. It is more expensive, but it's also more permanent and longer lasting. So if you have permanent beds, it's a good idea. You want to be sure that you ideally it's already got the holes pre-drilled in it. High quality ones also have technology in them that will not allow roots to grow into the lines. And they come spaced 12 inches, 18 inches, 24 inches, and I think 36 inches. Most people use the 12 or 18-inch depending on the plants they're putting in. And then you want the lines to be about 18 inches apart. And you want to offset the holes. So you're basically, it's a way of watering the entire ground, not just at the root ball. And that allows for greater expansion of the root system to make healthier plants. So that's something to think about. Next. I did want to just kind of give you a sense of how drip looks underground, because it's very deceiving if you go to look at it from on top of the ground. You think there's not only water going, it's a little tiny hole. Well, because of capillary action in the soil, meaning the water molecules kind of are pulled out and down by a physical process. The wetting underground will be much larger than what looks like on the surface. So in order to be sure you're getting enough water into the ground, you need to know how it reacts in sandy, loam, or clay. So you kind of know how far you want to space things and how deep and how long you want to water. Because some will drain through very fast, as in sand, some will stay saturated much longer, as in clay. So those are the factors with the soil that is particularly important to know in regards to drip. You need it for the overhead too, but it's really critical in the drip. Next. Special about trees, you want to be sure that in times when we have water restrictions that you water trees. You can let everything else die because they have long, shorter lifespans and can be replaced easier. Trees can live 100 years. So you don't want to lose a big tree. So make sure you water trees. Ideally, you want to have, if you can, every major tree should have its own valve so you can water it individually. And you want to put it in a spiral around. And the reason you want to do that is as the tree grows, you're just adding more piping to the end and increasing the spiral rather than you have to bring everything up and redo it if it's been put in, let's say, a grid pattern. So it's just a way to make it easier, especially if you have fruit trees and they're going to grow. You want to think about the future maintenance as much as what you put in design to make the plant grow that you're just putting in. Next. As I said before, you must flush your systems in order to keep them healthy and working. Well, that means both at the valve, which is that big filter, and then at the end of the line, you want to uncap it and run water through it to run anything that may have sediment put into the line to get that clear. You don't want to have to replace all of your emitters all the time. So this is to keep the lines clear. And it's a good idea to do that twice a year if you can. Spring and fall would be a good time to remember to do it. It's like you do the batteries in your fire detector. Same thing. Next. Now, I want to say that not all plants thrive on drip systems. So you do want to think about what are your plants. If you see that your plants that don't like drip can take anywhere from a few weeks to 2 years to die. So if you're seeing the same plant dying every 2 years, check first, is it a short-lived perennial? If it is not, then it doesn't like drip. So again, as you're replacing a plant, you might want to go, that plant didn't work, I need to replace it with some other type of plant that will like the system I have in. So again, you're matching the plant to the system, not the system to the plant. Next. A word about watering with hand. It is very efficient if you do it right, but you need to know how much water you're putting out. A lot of people stand there for 2 minutes and go, that looks like enough water. It's not penetrated enough. So you need to know how deep it's going. And in brief, there's 2 ways to do that. One, you can just stand and time it, with a clock. in a 5 gallon bucket, how long did it take that 5 gallon bucket to fill up? Okay, that's how long I need to water that spot to get that deep. The other way is you buy a water meter that you attach to your hose, and it will tell you, just like a little spinning knob or digital going. That's how many gallons of water or inches of water, whatever it's calibrated to. So you know how much water is actually going in. If you want to do it on the slow way, use a soaker hose, use a bubbler in a berm. You know, so those are all efficient ways of getting water and the right amount of water to your landscape. The bottom right one, if it was on a higher riser, is how you may want to water a native garden, because they actually prefer overhead spray, but you have to be careful that you don't do that too often in the summer, because many California natives don't like very much water in the summer. So it is effective for a native garden, but you have to do it at the right timing so that it works. Next. How do you know if you got enough water? You've got to test. There's no way of guessing. You can't walk by and look. So you have to, you know, plunge your hand in it, see how deep it is. You have to put a screwdriver so you can get it in the ground. You have to dig a hole in some manner with some kind of digging tool, or you use an actual meter that you can put in and it'll tell you if it's wet or dry. Whatever method you use, you need to kind of know and keep track of them. Right now, I wouldn't recommend very much watering. We got enough water over the last week to last us for a month, probably. So you have to keep an eye on the weather, not just what your system is doing as well. Next. And this is the part that gets the most people confused. Okay, if I have to know the soil and I have to know the plant and I have to know the wind conditions and I have to know if it's a native plant, all those factors are in fact how you decide to water. But you don't have to get it down to a fine detail. There's a level of common sense involved with this. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you can help your automatic system generally work for you. Next. So your controller is your assistant. You're still the brains. You still have to tell the controller what to do. If I've learned one thing about computers is they'll do exactly what you tell them to do. They won't do what you intended to tell them, but they will tell you what you do, what you tell them to do. So if you upgrade your controller from an old manual to a new smart controller, that can give you some additional power, I'll call it, on taking some of the guesswork out of when and how much to water. Because what that is all algorithms and computer networking and all, you know, fancy electronic voodoo that takes a lot of those variables into consideration and then adjust the water output based on that. So once you have programmed your controller, you know, with, are you on a slope, are these water-wise plants, you know, whatever the parameters are, then the controller then will do all the magic to make a lot of that work on the actual output of the water. I want you to notice if you're getting a new controller, if it's outdoors, make sure it's rated to be outdoors versus inside a garage, as an example. Make sure that it works if you're going to use it with your smartphone so you can manage it from afar. Make sure that it's compatible with your iPhone or your whatever equipment you're using. Make sure the run times are adequate. So you may have to run it and then check to see that it's the right thing, because it takes a while initially to get it set properly. So it's not just set it and then never look at it again. And then most importantly, you may need to readjust that again in the spring and the fall, because as you remember from earlier in the presentation, we are a wet winter, dry summer area. So that means we don't need as much artificial irrigation in the winter, and we need more in the summer in order to get an even magic inch every month. And that's why you're adjusting it, to adjust for that huge swing. In addition to that, we've had extreme weather. We've had extreme water. So you really have to be sure that it may even have to be turned off for a while. It may be the opposite in the summer. Extreme heat, because these are all kind of designed for averages. Sometimes we are out of average. So just be aware, you don't have to babysit this every day, but you kind of want to once a month kind of see, are we on the right trend? Next. again, we're trying to get that, what I call magic inch. That is the perfect amount of water over a month for low water use plants. You need that magic inch once a week if it's turf. So you can see by changing the plants, you can immediately change the amount of water you're gonna need in a month. So you're calculating that into things. As a rule of thumb, cool season grass, which is like bluegrass, the fine textured, beautiful, dark green grass that you want year round, it takes 1 to 2 inches a week. The reason for the range is summer to winter. Winter needs less, that's the inch. Summer needs more, that's the 2 inch. Warm season grass, by the same token, such as St. Augustine grass as an example, needs a 1/2 inch to 1 inch. It's 50% reduction. If you go down to a native grass like buffalo grass, you could probably reduce that again almost in half. So it depends on what the plants are. Next. Again, this is just showing where our highest water use is going to be, which is in July and August, because that's usually our hottest months. And it's the exact opposite look on the East Coast. So this is, if you come from the East Coast and you're watering like you did back there, you need to flip it 180 degrees and water it exactly opposite. Next. I don't know about the rest of you, but I can't remember what I had for breakfast hardly, let alone what I did for my water irrigation scheduling. So if you don't write it down, you won't know how to adjust it. It helps you for managing it. So write it down. It doesn't have to be complicated. If you don't have the water schedule and don't want to just put it on a post-it note and stick it to the garage, you can download them from the internet. You can be as fancy or as simple as you want. Just write it down so you know what you're doing and how you need to adjust. Next. And now that you've put all the water into your ground, you want to make sure it stays there. So you want to top everything with mulch. And what that does is, first off, it makes it beautiful. But more than that, from a water efficiency point of view, is it keeps weeds down, so they're not taking the water that you're putting in. And it stops or dramatically reduces, I don't know if it stops exactly, evaporation from the soil. So the water isn't evaporating up into the air. In addition to that, it's keeping the root zone cooler. And that also puts less stress and need from the plant as well for water. So it does a multitude of things. And so now your choice is going to be, do I want inorganic or organic mulch? They both have pros and cons to them. All of them help with the evaporation point of view. You want to make sure it's deep enough. 1 to 3 inches, depending on what the material is. Organic needs to be replaced ideally once a year, so it's going to be an ongoing maintenance cost. Inorganic won't need replacing as much, but it does need some replacing because it tends to sink into the ground. I would only caution you to not use too much inorganic if you think you're going to be changing the bed, because it is nearly impossible to get sunken rock that you've added out of the ground without an excavator, almost. And it might be you as the excavator, but I actually had to hire somebody to do that because it got too smashed down over time, and it made it impossible for digging, put in new plants. So know what you're doing, know why you're doing it. They're all good for the evaporation point of view. So always top with mulch. And that brings us, I think, to pretty much the end. There's a lot to think about. I hope I've given you a lot of information you haven't heard before. And water, oh, we'll go one more slide here. I think there's one on horticultural practices. Make sure your plants are hydrozones. Check which system works best for turf or ground cover, which is usually some form of overhead spray with the nozzles. Use the correct system, whether it's drip, overhead, or even hand watering. Upgrade all the technologies that you can to make it the most efficient, and then check it on a monthly basis. Next. Make sure you know how fast it goes through the soil. Be sure you're using the right amount for the plants you have. Water deeply but less often. What that does is it builds resilience in your plants, so they're not as stressed. It helps them get root depth and breadth. And that way they have more access and are more securely rooted into the ground and won't blow over if they're big plants as well. It's important to water early in the morning, and that's between 6 and 10. There's several reasons for that. One is that there's no wind, so for overhead, it's not blowing away. But what it does from a plant health point of view is that it allows water to prep the plant if it's going to be hot. So it helps them kind of gird up for that and get through a hot spell. In addition to that, it may allow a level of evaporation, especially if it's on leaves, which will reduce disease and pest problems that can have from too much moisture, which we often don't have here unless something's being overwatered consistently. So the idea is to work with nature to make sure all the water that you're putting out is effectively used and adjust your system seasonally. Yes, next. So thank you. As Melanie said, you can find us a lot of places. If you have a particular question, you can email our helpline and Master Gardener will get back with you with the results of their research to help you solve some problems. We are in partnership with Western and RCRCD, so we have different workshops we do throughout the year, as well as the farmers markets. So with that, if there are any questions, I'll do my best to answer them, and I know I gave you a lot of information to absorb. So, and we have anything?
No, we don't have any questions, but a lot of compliments about how great the presentation was, Len. Good job.
Thank you, thank you. Well, if there aren't any questions, I think we've hit the mark just right here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was perfect, Lynn. Thank you so much. That was an excellent presentation.
As always.
Oh, excellent closing slide there for Lynn.
Yes.
And as promised, I am going to share some pluggables with you if you're interested in the landscape evaluation. If you happen to be inside the Western Water, if you're a Western Water customer, you can call me here at the office and I would be the one helping you out. But if you happen to be outside, I believe I can check. Give me just a second. I can look that up right now. I'm gonna finish the recording here and then we can keep we can keep chatting here. So I just wanted to say, so I can close the recording, thank you so much for coming to our workshop today, and save the date for next month where we're going to talk about trees for tomorrow with our speaker Janet Harden. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, March 9th. So we look forward to seeing you on that day. And I want to say also, again, thank you very much for all of you attending. And happy Love Month, happy February. Don't forget it's Valentine's Day on the 14th. So some of you who have not gone out and got your sweetheart something sweet, you better hurry up. Because I want to see you next month. I don't want you to disappear because you didn't do what you were supposed to do. But again, we do appreciate you guys taking the time to visit, or to say to listen to our workshops. And we do appreciate any type of feedback that you would have for us. And again, thank you, Len, for your excellent presentation.
Absolutely. That was great.
Absolutely. Before I give you those other pluggables, I will say that the nozzles that Lynn was talking about, a lot of them are free. So that's one of the greatest things that you could do is when you audit your irrigation system, easiest thing is to just see what's broken. And luckily, a lot of your water districts and water providers will provide those nozzles for free. And they will be most likely MP rotator nodules, which stands for match precipitation. Rotary nozzles that will be the most efficient, as well as the WIVICs, the weather-based irrigation controllers. Great rebates on those. And one more thing is that if you're interested in becoming a Quail certified, there's going to be a free to attend. It's called a WELL DCP, Water Efficient Landscaper dual certification program that's going to be coming here to Riverside next week. I believe it's February 16th. And I will put that up in the chat just in just a second. But it will give you a chance to get certified as a qual, and also a qualified water manager. So if you can give me just a second, let me just get this website for you, and then that way I could share it. I'm going to share. Okay, so it's if you go to the clca.org and you go to events, you can see on there that there's going to be a free class coming here to Riverside. I'm sorry, I'm looking for my chat. I'm looking for my chat box here. Here it is. So this is the website for the free well DCP certification, and here is the website where bewaterwise.com, where you can get the landscape evaluation through Metropolitan. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. If there's not any more questions or any more comments, I will say have a great day and enjoy the weather. The mountains look beautiful, and have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye.
All
Thank
right,
you.
take care.
Yeah.